Hi, I'm Matt Welch. I'm at FreedomFest in Las Vegas, and I am honored to be joined by the great David Boaz, Executive Vice President of the Cato Institute. David, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You've done some interesting work, and Cato has done over the years about the libertarian vote, the block of people who are voting, and whether they self-identify as libertarian, they trend towards that. Have you done any recent work on that? How big do you perceive the libertarian bloc is, and where are their heads at as we approach the 2012 election?
Well, people ask me sometimes how many libertarians are there in America. I can give you any number ranging from like 100,000 to 59% of the public. But the best numbers, we think, David Kirby and I, and the work we did in 2 papers, is that if you ask people 3 values questions and you take the people who give libertarian answers to all 3, then you get somewhere around 15% of the electorate. They are questions like, is the government doing too much, or should it do more to solve social problems? Should the government be promoting traditional values, or should it stay out of promoting any kind of values? And I think there's a third one that also is sort of about the size of government intervention.
And now, where do you see that going? I mean, is there...
We don't have recent data. We know that they swung back against the Obama-Pelosi-Reid Democrats in 2008. And we argued in our paper, The Libertarian Vote in the Age of Obama, that libertarians are a leading indicator of where independents are going. They turned against Bush and the Republicans earlier than the other independents did. They turned against the Pelosi Congress earlier than other independents did. In 2010, I haven't seen data on how libertarians voted, but we know in 2008 they swung back toward the Republicans, or I like to think against the Democrats. And in 2010, with the Tea Party voting and everything, I can only imagine that they did vote more strongly that way.
So, I mean, there's a lot of pressure or a lot of discussion, particularly in the wake of the Obamacare decision, which was a 5-4 decision. A lot of Republicans, or people who want libertarians to play nice with the Republicans, are using the Supreme Court card now more than ever. You're a Virginia resident, if I'm not mistaken. So is this the year that libertarians need to come home to the Republican Party? Where do you see that kind of pressure, that dynamic going?
Any year that the electoral votes of Virginia are decided by 1 vote, it is very important for me to get out and vote. Since that will never happen, I take these "your vote is important" with a grain of salt. And my own attitude toward voting tends to be, is it better to vote for what you don't want and get it, or vote for what you want and not get it? So the Supreme Court is certainly a factor that ought to be considered. If you want more judges like John Paul Stevens, David Souter, and John Roberts, then you would certainly want to vote Republican. In theory, you might assume you have more chance of getting judges like Scalia and Thomas from a Republican than you do from a Democrat. But let's remember, there are First Amendment issues, there are issues of civil liberties, there are issues of the Patriot Act, surveillance, and so on, whereas a libertarian, I don't really want Republican judges in charge. So I think the Supreme Court is a mixed bag, just as policy in general is.
Speaking of which, you had a great piece, I think it was the Huffington Post, recently talking about, well, you know, Obama really has things on his record that he should be run on and be proud of, sort of sardonically. Walk us through some of the kind of non-economic reasons why libertarians should be outraged at Obama's record.
Well, that's right. It's pretty tough for him to run on the economy, so I was trying to say, hey, what can he run on? Well, he's done more drone strikes than any president in history. He's deported more illegal immigrants than any president in history. He's held more fundraisers than any incumbent president running for re-election. A lot of things like that that might concern progressives, more medical marijuana raids than any president in history. So in that sense, he has a lot to boast about, and yet I don't really hear him boasting about most of these things.
Cato just came out of about 9 months of a pretty public and unpleasant battle between some of the founding sort of members or influential people about the governance structure and whatever. It's basically Ed Crane versus the Koch brothers. It was resolved a few weeks ago, and now John Allison from BB&T, the bank, and is a great libertarian of his own, is now the head of it for a couple of years. Cato changed. Tell us what we can think or know about Cato in the future in the wake of this, which has now been set.
Well, what happened was Charles Koch thought this old document essentially made him and his brother the owners of the Cato Institute. They filed suit. It wasn't just Ed Crane, it was pretty much the entire staff and the entire board of directors who resisted that. A settlement was then reached, which involves Ed Crane, the co-founder and 35-year CEO, retiring somewhat earlier than he would have, and being replaced by John Allison. That hasn't happened yet, it'll happen in the fall. But it means we dissolved the shareholder agreement.
The one that precipitated the crisis to begin with.
So from now on, the board of directors is clearly in control of the Cato Institute, and I think that means we will stay on the same clear libertarian keel that we have been. John Allison has not yet been directly involved. He hasn't become CEO yet, and so I can't say how's life different.
Right.
What I can say is he's one of the great entrepreneurs of the past 20 years. He took BB&T from a small regional bank to the 10th largest financial institution in the country. He has strong views about management. He has strong views about liberty and individual rights. He's strongly influenced by Ayn Rand, as many of us are. And so we're looking forward to seeing what he might do.
And he's got it's a 2-year thing?
No, there was a little confusion about that. He's the CEO. He's the CEO as long as he and the board are happy with that, and there's no term limit on it. Ed Crane will remain involved as a consultant and with our fundraising and all of that, so he'll still be around too, but John Allison will become the CEO.
That's great. Thank you for the update on that, and
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for Reason TV with David Boaz. I'm Matt Welch.